No one understood why Alina Rousseau, the 24-year-old heiress of a global fashion empire, stood at the altar beside a man more than twice her age. The guests whispered behind manicured hands, their jeweled fingers trembling with disbelief. In a garden bathed in golden light and dripping with orchids, she looked like a fallen goddess, stoic, flawless, untouchable. And beside her stood Samuel Clay, a 57-year-old man with creases around his eyes, a suit that didn't quite fit, and a silence that clung to him like a second skin. There was no ring of affection between them, no glances exchanged or fingers laced. She didn't smile. Neither did he. The tabloids had already named it the most confusing wedding of the decade. Rumors swirled like perfume at the reception. Some said it was a publicity stunt, others believed it was a cruel joke played on her powerful family. But Alina remained unbothered, distant, even as champagne glasses clinked and camera flashes chased her down marble halls. Only she knew the truth behind her decision. And Samuel? He never asked for her reasons. They had met 3 months earlier, not in some grand ballroom, but in the dim hallway of a hospital. Her mother had fainted during a board meeting. Samuel had been mopping the floor nearby. When the chaos had passed, and others walked away, Samuel stayed behind. Quietly, he offered Alina a bottle of water and said nothing else. Not a compliment, not a question, just presence. She remembered that stillness. And when she reached her breaking point, when the walls of wealth, expectations, and cold negotiations started closing in, she thought of him. The man who didn't want anything from her. Their courtship, if it could be called that, was more of a transaction. Alina offered stability. Samuel offered escape. "Will you marry me?" she had asked one evening, her voice stripped of emotion. He looked at her for a long time, then simply said, "If that's what you want." Now, seated beside him in the back of the car after the ceremony, the city lights flickering like a distant dream, Alina kept her gaze out the window. Samuel didn't speak. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly, finally. He took a moment before answering. "No," he said. "Do you?" She didn't respond. But her hand tightened slightly on the hem of her dress. Outside, the world still buzzed with opinions, judgments, and headlines. But inside that silent car, something else stirred. A question unspoken. A connection unexplored. They had crossed a line neither truly understood yet. And for better or worse, the story had just begun. Their home was nothing like the penthouse Alina had left behind. Nestled in the countryside, the cottage was old, weathered by time, and surrounded by towering trees that whispered with every breeze. It had one bedroom, a small kitchen with creaky floorboards, and a porch swing that groaned under the weight of silence. Yet, strangely, it didn't suffocate her, it grounded her. Samuel lived simply. He woke early, made black coffee, and tended to a modest vegetable garden. He spoke only when necessary, but when he did, his voice was calm, unhurried, and certain. Alina observed him like a puzzle, each quiet movement a piece she couldn't quite place. Days passed in gentle routine. She would read on the porch while he repaired things she didn't know were broken. They rarely spoke at length, but the silence between them grew less awkward, more peaceful. Still, questions brewed within her. Who exactly was Samuel Clay? Why had he agreed to marry her with no hesitation? And how could a man who claimed to be nothing more than a janitor quote Rumi and Nietzsche from memory? One afternoon, Alina followed him into the woods behind the house. He was collecting wild herbs, humming an old tune she couldn't recognize. She watched as his rough fingers moved with practiced ease, treating the fragile leaves as if they were precious. It struck her then, this man had depth, but he kept it locked away with deliberate intention. Later that evening, while putting away laundry in the modest bedroom they now shared, Alina noticed something unusual. Underneath the bed, tucked carefully behind a stack of winter blankets, sat a wooden box. It was old, the edges worn smooth, the latch barely holding. Curiosity prickled at her fingertips, but she left it untouched. That night, she lay in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. "I thought I'd feel trapped," she whispered into the darkness. Samuel didn't respond immediately. But then, softly, "And do you?" She hesitated. "Not in the way I expected." He turned to face her, the moonlight outlining his face, lined, weathered, but strangely gentle. "People think silence is empty," he said. "But sometimes it's just safe." Alina didn't answer, but the warmth that settled in her chest told her he understood something she hadn't dared to admit to herself. Something was shifting. Slowly, but undeniably. This marriage, born from desperation and escape, was becoming something else, something neither of them had planned. And in the quiet corners of their shared life, a new kind of closeness was taking root. Not loud. Not rushed. But real. Alina couldn't stop thinking about the wooden box beneath the bed. For days, it lingered in her mind, whispering questions she wasn't brave enough to ask out loud. Samuel never mentioned it, never offered an explanation. And though she told herself it wasn't her business, curiosity grew like ivy, slow and inevitable. One quiet morning, while Samuel tended the garden, she slid the box out from its hiding place. Her hands trembled as she unlatched it. Inside lay a stack of yellowed papers, worn photographs, and a small, leather-bound journal. The scent of cedar and age filled the room. She lifted a photo first. A younger Samuel, clean-shaven, standing beside a gleaming car, wearing a tailored suit and a confident smile. It was jarring. The man she knew now barely resembled the figure in the image. Next, she opened the journal, flipping through pages of neat handwriting. Words like acquisition, betrayal, and downfall leapt out at her. Then, near the back, she found something more personal. A letter addressed to someone named Myra Star. The words were raw, aching with heartbreak and disillusionment. Samuel had once built something vast and important. He had loved and lost, not just money or status, but trust. That explained the walls he kept around him, the quiet, the solitude. The front door creaked. Alina snapped the box shut, heart racing. He entered, muddy boots tracking across the floor. His eyes landed on the box sitting between them. For a long moment, neither moved. The room felt fragile, like one wrong word would shatter it all. "You opened it," Samuel said, voice low, not accusatory. "I'm sorry," she whispered, ashamed but not regretful. I needed to know who you were." He walked to the table, removed his gloves, and sat down slowly. "I used to think success would protect me," he said after a pause. "Money. Reputation. All of it. Then one deal, one person I trusted, took it all away. I disappeared because I couldn't stand who I'd become." Alina sat across from him, eyes searching his. "I didn't marry you for your story," she said softly. "But knowing it makes me want to stay." He blinked, surprise flickering across his face. They didn't say much more that day. But later that evening, as they shared dinner by candlelight during a power outage, Samuel reached across the table and brushed his fingers against hers. It was a small gesture, barely a touch, but it carried weight. A silent agreement. A shared truth. Their lives, once strangers to each other, had begun to merge in quiet, tender ways. For the first time since their wedding, Alina felt something warm unfurl inside her, something dangerously close to hope. The days that followed unfolded like late autumn, quiet, beautiful, laced with melancholy. The rhythm of Alina and Samuel's life grew smoother, less cautious. Where once there had been distance, there was now a delicate ease. They no longer needed to fill silences with words. Their presence, side by side, was enough. One evening, after a long walk through the woods, Alina paused beneath a maple tree, its scarlet leaves fluttering down like a slow, deliberate blessing. Samuel stopped beside her, his hands tucked in his coat pockets, eyes cast upward. "I never expected to feel anything real in this marriage," she admitted softly, her breath visible in the chill. "It was supposed to be practical. A way out." Samuel turned toward her, his expression unreadable. "You've always had the freedom to leave." "I know," she said. "But I don't want to." For a long moment, the only sound was the rustle of leaves around them. Samuel reached out, cupping her cheek gently. His hand was warm, steady. "You remind me of who I used to be. Before everything got so loud." "And you," she hesitated, searching for words that didn't sound rehearsed. "You make me feel safe in my own skin. No pretending. No expectations. His smile was small but sincere, and for the first time, Alina saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before: affection, quiet and deep. That night, as rain tapped softly against the cottage roof, they sat by the fire. Samuel read aloud from a book of poetry he'd kept hidden for years, his voice slow, each word chosen with care. Alina leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. She closed her eyes, listening not just to his voice, but to the heartbeat she now knew by rhythm. Later, as they lay in bed, the question came, not from her, but from him. "Do you think this could be love?" She turned to him, studying the lines time had carved into his face, the depth behind his eyes. "I don't think it," she whispered. "I feel it." It wasn't the fairytale kind of love, the whirlwind, all-consuming passion the world loved to glorify. This love was different. Steady. Earned. Born in silence. Nurtured in truth. Months passed. The world, still buzzing with judgment, eventually lost interest in the odd pairing of a young heiress and a former businessman-turned-janitor. But by then, Alina and Samuel had stopped caring. In the end, they built something the tabloids would never understand. A life shaped by quiet mornings, shared meals, and conversations that lingered long after the words ended. Love didn't need fanfare. It needed only honesty. And in each other, that's exactly what they'd found.